All right, we are back for another Fellow launch event. My name is Aiden. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO at Fellow. Super excited to be here with you all today. Today we're going to announce something really big, something that we've been working on for a long time, a part of the product that is so core, that has been there since day one, that you've been using all the time in your one-on-ones and your team meetings, and we've reimagined it, reinvented it, and so excited to share with you what that looks like. We're gonna be talking about AI, all the additional changes we've made since our AI launch event that we had a few months ago, considering all the feedback you've given us during this time. We're gonna talk about our meeting guidelines, functions, and so much more. We're gonna end with a Q&A process. I'm gonna answer all of your questions, talk about the roadmap for 2024 and beyond. This is gonna be your super fun event. Thank you for joining. And without further ado, let's dive right in. Hey, Manuela, good to see you.
Aiden, welcome back. Welcome back to you. Welcome back to all the people that are saying hi in the chat. I'm so excited to be back for our last product launch of 2023.
I know. And yeah, hello to everybody in the chat. Let us know what city you're tuning in from. Lots of excitement in the chat. You know, it is the last launch before the end of the year, right? But we might have an announcement before the end of the year as well. Like we're constantly shipping. And so I know we're working on some things in the background. And so maybe there might be more. But what I wanted to say is like, these are obviously, I think, both of our favorite events, but yeah. It's crazy how much stuff we're going to show today. As I was seeing, from the team, like as they were showing me the product, and I was kind of digesting all the things that we're going to show. And I said, oh my God, we should have called this like Fellow version 7 or something, you know, but we're only calling it Fellow version 4.3. And it sounds like it's a micro change. And especially we just came off the back of, we just launched our meeting guidelines, which was huge. We had some really industry experts tune into that call. It was, you know, like huge change. Large organizations everywhere are deploying our meeting guidelines. We just launched all of our AI features. So you would think that we would be done and we wouldn't have much to show today, but it's going to be mind-blowing. So buckle your seatbelts.
We're never done. We're never done. We're always making the product better and better. And yeah, it just feels like a holiday gift from the Fellow team, I feel. So perfect for this time of year. I'm so excited to see what's new.
It's so huge. And like the part that is the most mind-blowing, in my opinion, is that we are going to show everybody, you know, a major change in the product of the most fundamental thing that people have been using in the product so far. So the thing that you have been using for a very long time, that's about to change.
Yeah, I'm ready to
Show some excitement in the chat. Like, I want to see some nice emojis, you know, some excitement. Like, should we do it? If there's not enough excitement, I think we'll just call it a day and like, no, this is great. Love it. Love it. So much excitement. So should I share my screen? Should we do this? Okay. This is always my favorite part because I know exactly what happens, right? A lot of fellow power users, a lot of our basically like supporters and fans have always told me that first moment, Aiden, when you share your screen, our eyes immediately start scanning the entire screen to see before you start to mention it, if we can notice what the first thing is that you're going to mention. And so this is that moment. You can start looking before I tell you what the first thing is. But if you're an astute observer, you're looking through the screen, maybe you're looking on this side, maybe down here, maybe in the middle somewhere. But if you look very, very carefully, there's a subtle change on the right-hand side of the page. And you can see that the right-hand rail looks a little bit different. And so what is this like super curious icon here? And you can see it says private notes. And so what we're about to show you is our reimagined private notes interface. So I'm going to click it and voila, this is like the first view of what this looks like. So before I dive in to talk about exactly what happens and like why it's so different and how it's going to change the way that you're going to do one-on-ones, for example, forever, why don't we start with like, what are some of the problems? I mean, you've been using private notes for a long time. What are some problems that you've heard or you've experienced in using them so far?
I have been using it for a long time. And I also took some time this morning to read our candy board, which is where users leave us product feedback. Just a quick reminder to check out the candy board if you have feedback for us. But a lot of people were saying that they like to use private notes to write personal details from their direct reports. So for example, it's really hard to remember your direct reports pets' names or work anniversaries or birthdays when you have 5, 6, 7 direct reports, right? So a lot of people were using private notes for this reason and this use case, but they were struggling to find that information when private notes were linked to each note. So you would have to scroll down and find those notes.
Yeah, it was really hard. So it's like you wanted to use it, but you couldn't really use it in the way that you wanted to. And so what you're going to see here is you see by default, the interface looks very different. And by default, we throw in a template because it's noticing that this is a meeting between just you and I. So this is like a one-on-one for Fellow. And so by default, what we do is we throw in this default template. And so I'm going to assume that your birthday is January 1st, 2000.
I'm not that young, people.
I don't know.
I may look that young, but I'm not that young.
Yeah, so I just make up a date. Your work anniversary, I know we've been doing this for 5+ years together. So I know that that's the case. We can write partner's name. I'm just going to make up a name here. Children's name, no children. So maybe I'll kind of like delete that part over there. But basically the idea is that you can customize this any way that you want. And all of this is customizable. And maybe, what I want to do here is maybe I want to just put, pet's name. And I don't know that you have a pet, but let's just say your pet is named Polly or something, right? And so this really gives me a viewpoint to be able to type whatever I want. And you might say, well, Aiden, we could do this before. So what's so great about this new interface? So what's so great about it is this is now a sticky note. So in other words, as I scroll down and I go into previous notes, you see that this actually doesn't change. So it's almost like a permanent fixture for the entire meeting series that you have. It's always going to be there. And it's not like a new one gets auto-generated for each and every note. It's just one of them. And the beautiful thing is, again, it's like a sticky note. And so what's cool about it is you might say, well, what if I want another one? And to have another one is actually really, really simple. So before we actually add another one, which you can see there's a new button here, what I want to do is I want to rename this one. So let's just call this like personal details, something like that, right? So I can always reference this. I can keep this open. I suspect a lot of people are just going to have one sticky note and then they're just going to use that for everything. But if you want to go a little bit more advanced, you can actually give these things names. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the new button. And as I click the new button, you see a brand new one appears. And so now I can call this whatever I want. So maybe this other one, I'm going to call this something like, career goals, right? And so now I can have 2 of these and I can kind of cycle through each and every one of those private notes.
Aiden, I see at the bottom of that private note, there's these icons that I'm guessing mean something, but I'll let you explain.
Yes, very good observation. Again, like in the world of people are looking, scanning, figuring out what's different. So yeah, the old private notes interface was very much a scratchpad. But what you can see is like, these are some of the icons that you're already familiar with in Fellow. And so the beautiful thing is, and this is one of those moments that I think everybody's going to freak out about, which is you have all of the same functionality that you have almost all of the same functionality that you have in our collaborative area, you're going to have that in our private notes area. So let me show you what that's all about. So for all the power users, you know that you can do open parentheses, close parentheses, and you get a talking point. But there you have it. You now have a talking point inside of the private notes interface. So let's say I want to talk to you about big news, right? And so this is something that I leave for myself as a private note. I don't want you to see it before the one-on-one, but now I can have this here so that I can know about it, so I can remember to talk to you about it. And so this is a really, really powerful thing. I think if we just left it here, this would be amazing. And I can see in the chat, people are going crazy over this, which is awesome. But if we left it here, I think, it would have been amazing on its own. But the one thing that I think completely changes everything is the fact that you can now click this handlebar and watch my hands very closely as I move this from the private notes directly onto the collaborative note area. Bam.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that one. And that's amazing. That's really great. It just means that you can prepare private talking points in advance and just move them to the note when you're in the meeting. That's a game changer.
I mean, this is huge. Like, so many places we use stuff like this. You know, in our town halls, for example, I know we give each other shout outs, but we want it kind of to be a little bit of a surprise. So, you know, you can put that in the private notes, but then once you speak it, then you can kind of drag it in. And by the way, it works both ways. You can drag from one side to the other. And again, super, super powerful that you can do things like this. And again, if that was the only thing that you could do, it still would be massive, right? Like, that on its own is huge. So you can do all the typical things you can do and expect here. But now there's one more thing that I think is super, super helpful, right? Let's say that we're in a meeting, and during the meeting, you say something like, you make a statement about you being concerned about some report, or something you say makes me want to look into something. So now what I can do is I can create a private action item for myself. And again, for the power users, you can just use a keyboard shortcut, open bracket, close bracket. Of course, you can click the icons down here, and I can say, look into report in more detail, right? And as soon as I put this in, and again, this is huge, this becomes an action item just for me. And you'll notice as soon as I put that in, at the top, now there is an action items tab, and there is a one that because it knows there's an action in there. And as I go in here, you can see that now I have this action item that says, look into report in more detail. And again, that's huge because that's something that only I can see. And maybe you can verify on your side. You won't be able to see that.
Yeah, I'm verifying on my side. I don't see that action item. That's awesome.
Yeah, again, like, this is incredible because you can leave yourself action items and they show up only for you. And then what you might say is, well, I want to, see this in my total action items list. And so the good news is if I do go to action items, you can see that it actually does get posted there as well. This is just for you to be able to see. And again, it brings all of the great things about Fellow into the private note section.
That's amazing. I know so many of our users had requested this, so I'm really happy that it's finally out.
Yeah. And by the way, like, I did want to show another thing, which is all the typical functionality of if you go from one old meeting to another one. So if I go, for example, to another page, like I go to this important meeting page and then I go back, what you'll see is that the private notes are going to be here. And again, you can still switch down and go back to whichever one that you want to view. So all of that information will continue to be there. And again, when you first go into place, the important thing to note is the private notes will be blocked. Just like we had in the past, by default, it's going to get blocked because we want to make sure that if you are sharing your screen, it's not going to show by accident. So by default, it's going to be hidden. But I kind of like it this way because it kind of gives me a sense that, hey, I do have something written here. Mm-hmm. So I know to look at it if I want to do that.
Mm-hmm. And when people are done reading the private notes, can they minimize them? How can they do that?
Yeah, so that's a great question as well. So you can minimize it by clicking the collapse button right here, and then it can come back right there. You'll also notice a couple of other things. One is there is a note over here. So sometimes by default, and this is really, really powerful because you might say, well, sometimes I do want private notes to be linked to a particular note. And so the beautiful thing is when you first press new, it actually does link it to whatever note is available there. So by default, it will take on a date. And then sometimes if you're reviewing one of those notes, you see that there's this item here. And when you click on that, it'll take you back to whatever note, whatever collaborative note was in sync when you created that private note. So we still have the same functionality as before, except we're making this a lot more versatile.
Yeah, super powerful. I'm excited to try this out.
What you'll also notice is that there's a view all. So if I go to the view all, you can now see all of the private notes that you have. You can kind of click on them. And again, if there was more, you could kind of scroll through them. And so you'll also be able to see all of your private notes in one place. And one final thing that I wanted to mention is that if you are on a mobile device, we've also thought about that. So if I make my screen a lot smaller, what you'll notice is this is what it looks like. You still have the notes. You can still go to the private notes. And so again, if you're on a mobile device or a smaller screen or an iPad or something like that, you can still use this. And again, we've taken private notes from being, basically like a second-class citizen. We're bringing it up front and center. So really giving you full versatility for all of your meetings.
Super excited to try it out and to hear our users' feedback.
Yeah. So there you have it. That's just feature number 1. And again, I said everybody's going to be super excited about this amazing, amazing new addition to Fellow. It's going to change the way that you're going to use this for your meetings. And by default, we've also taken a little bit of a suggestive design here. So by default, private notes is going to be open when you go into a one-on-one, just because we think that those will be cases where you use it the most. And for group meetings, it's going to be minimized by default. So again, that's kind of a design decision that we've made. We think that's going to be the most prevalent use case, and hopefully, but you'll let us know. So as we get feedback, obviously this is going to be iterated. So the other thing that's next, and this is an important one, is when it comes to our AI bot. So we've done a couple of things. One is we've decided to change the name of our AI bot. And it went from being called the Fellow Meeting Assistant to now we're calling it the Fellow Meeting Copilot. And it's a small change, but it means a lot. And so it actually works really well with our logo. The original intent behind our logo, a lot of people ask us, what is that propeller? What is that thing that's spinning? And the original idea, again, when we were building Fellow, was we really wanted it to be a co-pilot for you. And this name change really reflects something that was our early vision of what we wanted to do. So I'm very excited about that. But that's not the feature that we wanted to talk about. What I want to talk about was another major pain point. Again, people are adopting our AI solution across the customer base. It's really, really been a big and important change for everyone. But the thing that they've been asking us is, there are a couple of issues with it. I mean, do you remember some of the things that people have been saying so far?
Well, the main feedback that I hear is that it was almost like hard to remember to invite the bot every time you had a meeting. And it happened to me personally. Whenever I had team meetings or project check-ins, and maybe I had told you, I'm going to record this because I want to send you like a clip from this meeting. And then after the meeting, I would go, oh my God, I forgot to record that meeting.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. And so that's why we've decided to introduce and build something new that we're calling meeting scheduling. And so what we're doing is you can actually go in and click on any future meeting. So let's say the one that's going to occur tomorrow. And when you do that, let me just show one like this. These are all already set to be recording. And if I go to one that maybe is not, like this one, you can see that there is a new toggle at the top. And when you hover over it, it says auto recording is off, right? And so when you click on it, and actually I want you to pay really close attention because there's a toggle up here and there's also a toggle down here. And the reason for this is a recurring meeting. So as soon as I click this, you'll notice that the toggle gets turned on for the entire recurring series. And again, very, very powerful. So once you set it on, it's on, right? You don't need to remember. But the beautiful thing is, let's say for a particular meeting, you change your mind and you don't want that meeting to be recorded. Very, very simple. You can always kick FellowBot out at any point in time. So that's something that you can still do. But by pre-recording it or pressing this button in advance, the Fellow Meeting Copilot will just join automatically. So again, huge change. And it's going to make it a lot easier for everybody to remember to record all of their meetings.
Yeah. I want to hear from people in the chat if they've already been using the AI Meeting Copilot and what they've been using those transcripts and meeting summaries for. Very, very curious.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been hearing a lot is for cross-functional meetings. I find that for cross-functional or project meetings, these things tend to be really, really important because you want to be able to revisit decisions, you want to be able to revisit action items and things like that. And a lot of times it makes sense to send the meeting summary or the meeting notes to other people who weren't able to attend just so that they can keep informed of what's actually going on. So again, if that's all we showed, that would be pretty good. But we decided to take it one step further. So we really wanted to make sure to make it extra easy for you to be able to pre-schedule all of these meeting recordings. So what you can now do is if you go to your, again, like this can work on whatever calendar you're using, but as I click on any particular meeting, what you'll notice is that by default, there's something that says this meeting will be recorded. So a lot of these, I think I've already turned on, but I'll show you what this looks like. So if I create a new meeting, and as I create this new meeting, as I add, for example, you to the list of attendees, and you can see some of our meeting guidelines from our last demo show up. Wednesday's a no meeting day, so it's warning me not to book this meeting. But I did want to show you that at the bottom, there's going to be a record and summarize option. So you can turn this on at any point in time, and it makes it really easy for you to be able to do that. And for any particular meeting, if that toggle is not on, you'll be able to turn on the toggle. You can see, for example, for this one, this toggle is not on, but I can very easily click it just like that, turn it on and off. And so again, another point where you can do this. And what I would say is the biggest thing for me is now I have the confidence that if I say I'm not going to attend that meeting, I know that it's going to be recorded and summarized, and I'm going to get sent the notes.
Yeah. You know, Aiden, we used to have this little hack. For example, when I was off or on vacation, I would add an action item at the top of the agenda saying like, please remember to record this meeting for me. But it's kind of nice to not have to do that anymore. And now I can just go and click on that toggle and make sure the meeting is recorded if I'm not there.
Yeah, again, like massive, massive, huge. And yes, I think a lot of people have been using that hack. And we used to have it for our town halls. Don't forget to record. And so now this is just going to happen automatically, super powerful. And all of that information continues to stay in Fellow. And if you haven't seen what the AI meeting summarization looks like, make sure to check out our AI launch event. We have a bunch of videos there. If you go to the Fellow YouTube channel, you'll be able to see that. So that's another thing to point out. Now, what's another thing people have also been saying about our AI Meeting Copilot? It was kind of missing. It didn't work for everyone.
Mm-hmm. We have a lot of users around the world. Is it related to that, Aiden?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it is.
I'm trying to guess, but it was a very common thing. I think that our customer support and customer success team would bring up. There's a lot of people that use Fellow in international teams, right? Like we work in a distributed world. Distributed work is so common. And meetings take place in many different languages in Fellow, which is kind of cool. We're very international here at Fellow.
Yeah, I think, what is it, like customers in 100 plus countries, or I forget, I lost count at this point. But let's talk about this. So let's test this because you speak a few languages. So you speak Spanish as well. Why don't we try this? I would love to
test it and surprise people in the chat.
Yeah, let's see what it looks like. So I'm just going to press record, and then maybe you can speak to us and we'll see what it looks like.
Bueno, bienvenidos a esta reunión. Estoy hablando en español para demostrarles que ahora Fellow puede entender diferentes idiomas y transcribir en diferentes idiomas. Entonces, cuando pongamos una pausa, vamos a ver que Fellow va a crear una transcripción y un resumen de lo que estoy diciendo en español.
All right. So now we kicked Fellow.app out.
Just a live test. We'll see. And as you all can see, these meeting summaries are generated really quickly. Like I'm always very impressed by the fact that like a minute or two after the meeting ends or after you kick out the Fellow bot, the meeting summary is ready.
The other thing that I want to point out while this meeting summary is being generated is that we didn't give it any prompts in terms of, what language you were speaking. I think right now there is a little bit of a limitation in terms of how many languages you can speak on the same call. So if you are switching languages very quickly in the same call, it doesn't work as well. But when you start with one dominant language, then it's going to work. Of course, this is like our first version of multilingual that we're building into the bot. But as time passes, I'm sure we'll be able to continue to add that. So what do you think about the summary so far?
It's great. It says, I mentioned that now Fellow can understand different languages and transcribe in different languages. I'm curious, Aiden, if you click on that summary, can we see the transcript? Yeah, now you can see on the right side exactly what I said, which is really cool.
Yeah, but this is the nice thing, right? And again, we go into a lot more detail of this demo if you look at our last AI launch, but you can click on any portion and just skip directly to that section, search the transcript, you can download things. And the other thing that people have been asking is being able to send these things as part of the meeting summary after the fact. So that's another thing that, of course, you can also do. Whenever you click send notes, all this information will travel to the people that you want. And if you're asking, can I automatically do that? I want that to automatically happen. Super easy to do. You can always click on the lightning bolt. There's a whole bunch of automations, including post-meeting recaps, that you can always make sure that this stuff happens automatically. So there you have it, multilingual transcription. And so now it's time for the next feature that we want to show you. And I think like this is a super powerful one, because one thing that you can now do is, now that you are recording and you're summarizing and you're transcribing all of this information, part of the use case is it allows you to kind of relax during the meeting a little bit. If you've done your preparation work, maybe you take some notes, maybe you take some private notes, but you know that if you need to, you can always go back to the records and see everything. A summary is going to be generated. The recording is there. And over the course of time, what you might notice is, well, I'm starting to have a lot of information in Fellow. I mean, it really is starting to be the hub for all of my meetings. And now it has even more detail about all of these different things. And so it's almost like this knowledge repository. And when you have something that important and so much stuff in it, it makes sense to be able to search through it really, really well. So what we're going to announce today is something that we're calling our new search experience. And so the new search experience is really, really powerful. I'll show you how I use it. For me, it's mostly about pressing Command K or Control K on Windows. And of course, you can get to it in multiple ways. You can always go to the home section and click on search. My favorite way to get there is by pressing Command K. And as soon as I do, you can start typing anything. So for example, if I start typing your name, Manuel, you can see it shows up meetings that you and I are in. If I type in town hall or town, it shows me my town hall meeting. Again, it's very, very fast for you to be able to find exactly which meeting. So the reason that this is powerful is, like, sometimes I'll think, oh, I really want to talk to Brian about this topic. I need to get to that page really, really fast. So Command K, type Brian, immediately I can press enter and go to Brian without touching my mouse, right? Very, very fast.
So fast.
But the other thing that you can do, and this is a really powerful one, as you know, Fellow also has hashtags. And hashtags are very, very powerful. If you're not using them, I strongly recommend that you start. It's a very, very powerful way to tag information inside of your Fellow meeting agendas and notes. So let's try this. I'm going to type hashtag decision. What I can do is, you can see what the top results are, right? So here's a hashtag decision. So I press enter right there. And as I do, it's now going to show me all of the different places where the hashtag decision was used. And look at how fast that actually was.
So fast to find decisions, ideas. I like to use the tag idea sometimes. And also in our team, we use hashtags for our company values. So that is also a really interesting way to use tags.
It's so, so powerful. And there's a lot more that you can do with this. But again, for everybody who's like scanning the screen, kind of is zoomed in.
I see something that I think is new. I use obviously Fellow a lot, so I notice these things very quickly. But I see you can now search through transcripts.
Okay, let's try that. So now I'm going to press transcripts, and look at that. This is all the people, I guess, like from a town hall. And in this case, it's searching for the word decision. So it's actually getting everything from the transcripts as well. Again, super, super powerful. So if you're now saying, hey, what meeting was it that, this topic was talked about? Like, I want to find it. I want to go in. I want to read the summary. I want to watch that particular clip. This is how you can do it, right? So again, extremely, extremely powerful. I can click view full recording. I can go there and then go to the exact moment in time where that's talked about. Super powerful.
Super powerful way to find information in Fellow.
I think like one concern people might be saying is like, well, what about privacy? Who can see this stuff? Again, this is the most important thing for us, right? You trust us with this information. And the way that we approach this is the way that we approach all of Fellow meeting agendas and notes. And that is that you can only see the things that you were part of. So if you were part of the meeting, then you can see the information in that meeting. If you were not, when you do the searching, you're not going to see that there. So I do want to also show a couple of really fun things. One is like you can now search private notes. Again, not something you could do before. Comments, files. And then these filters are super, super powerful, right? So if you're thinking, yeah, but it was like, the word decision is mentioned a lot, but really what I want to do is I want to search for when Manuela and I talked about the word decision, right? Very, very powerful. So we've done a lot of work, to make all of this information be searchable and be searchable so fast actually requires a lot of engineering. And so a shout out to our platform team and our DevOps team that have been working very, very hard to make something like this possible.
We have an awesome team here at Fellow. Yeah, big shout out to everyone who made this release a reality.
Okay. Again, a lot more to talk about. So let's keep going. So the next thing that I want to talk about is another huge change that we're making. Obviously, this is our famous interface, right? Like you come to Fellow, like this is the interface that you pay attention to. And, you click on something, you see the meeting notes for that particular thing. That's what Fellow is all about. But sometimes I think you need something a little bit more than that. And like, what have you heard about the way people want to traverse things?
Yeah, we received some feedback from people who like to start their week by planning their meetings and wanted a different way to see meetings that already had an agenda and meetings that did not have an agenda yet, which I think is a great practice to start your week like that.
It's exactly that, right? Like when you want to stay on top of things, that's what you want to do. So that's why today we're announcing something new that we're calling My Week. And My Week is really, really powerful. And you can kind of see here, it says beta open My Week. And, some people may have noticed that before, but let's see what happens when I actually click it. So I'm going to click open My Week. And immediately what you see is my whole week in one view. And so this is really, really powerful because you can actually go to different sections. So you can have your action items open while you're viewing your week. And again, it's really, you're in this kind of planning mode. You can kind of traverse things on the right. You can close this if you want to get a little bit more view. And our intent is to be able to make it super easy for you to get to what you need to and get there very, very fast. So the first thing that I want to point out is the filters that we have on the right. So very powerful. You'll notice that there's a filter for meetings I organize. So when I click on that, you can see the ones that I organize are highlighted. When I turn it off, everything's highlighted. And then our favorite thing, right? Finding those meetings with no agenda. So when I click on this, you can see these are the meetings that currently have no agenda. And what we say about that.
This is so beautifully designed, I must say. And yeah, just a reminder for people who are new here that one of our mottos at Fellow is no agenda, no attenda. So make sure all those meetings have agendas now with this My Week view.
It's a very good point. And so the other thing that I want to point out is you can click two of these at the same time. That's really what you want to focus on. So if there's no agenda and you organize it, this is where you need to pay attention. And so amongst the other things, again, like our intent with this, and it's always important to talk to our, power users about our intention with building these features. Our intention is to really help you prepare for your meetings, and really without having a week view in this format, that's something that was lacking. Because again, we want you to, in one interface, be able to see the things you need to prepare for and then do those. So this is still tied to your Google or Microsoft Office calendar. Nothing changes. This is not meant to replace your calendar. It's just meant to give you a holistic view. So when it comes to preparation, you can do those things. Now, there's a lot more that you can do here, though. So let's click on this one particular meeting. So as soon as you click it, very, very powerful, you can actually see all the information about the meeting, including things like the meeting cost, whether the meeting will be recorded, what your answer is. You can even edit the meeting, right? It still syncs with your calendar. So you can change the attendees. You can do anything that you typically would want to do in your calendar. And then you can click on Open Note to actually go to that particular meeting note. But for the power users, I want to show you something else so that you can get there even faster. You can actually double click on any meeting. So if I go ahead and double click on this, it'll take me to that meeting really fast.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
So again, very, very powerful. So what we want you to be able to do is just double click on any particular thing, go to the place that you want to, and it makes it really, really fast. So a couple of ways that you can actually get there. So you can actually also get here from the home tab. If you go to My Week, again, gives you the full flexibility to be able to do exactly what you want and do it really, really fast. And one more thing that I will mention while we're here, and I think this is an important one, is all of the meeting guidelines concepts that we showed you previously, those also exist here as well. So for example, at our company, we like to do speedy meetings, right? We want an hour meeting to be 50 minutes. And, at different companies, there's different settings. Some people want it to start 10 minutes past the hour. Some people want it to end 10 minutes before the hour. So all of those meeting guidelines are still built in. You see, as I'm selecting this, even though I'm selecting the full hour, it's automatically starting 10 past the hour. So all those meeting guidelines are continued to be built in here. Or if I try and book a meeting on Wednesday, we have a no meeting Wednesday. So as soon as you start to add participants, you can see all those meeting guidelines continue to be shown here as well.
And I know there is an announcement about meeting guidelines at the end of this event.
Yes, I think we can talk about it now. We should talk about the meeting.
Okay,
what is the
let's
announcement?
say it now. Let's say it now. So our product team wanted us to announce that meeting guidelines will now be available for Outlook users. So all of you who use Outlook calendars or Office 365 will now be able to access our meeting guidelines feature. So super excited about this. What do you think it means for our users, Aiden?
I mean, again, this is huge. This is one of those features that if you want to make changes across your organization, again, Fellows always empowered you to make changes in your own team, but sometimes you want to make changes across the company. If you want to make changes across the company, make sure you don't invite too many people, no meeting days are respected, that meetings are shorter, that meetings have an end date, all the different best practices, that all meetings start with an agenda. All those different best practices are really hard to reinforce. But again, with meeting guidelines, all of a sudden it becomes, a click of a button, it's deployed across the organization. So something super powerful. But now that it exists for Outlook users as well, again, this can be used by everyone. So very, very powerful. I will also mention, Manuela, that some of these things, we're constantly enhancing this. So I wanted to show you that even things like the start meetings 10 past the hour, even things like that are automatically baked in. You can see that it was automatically changed even inside my Google Calendar. It took a lot of engineering work to be able to do stuff like this, right, automatically and get all these behaviors across the board. I think my favorite thing is, as you know, I talk to a lot of CEOs, leaders of organizations, people who are really, really thinking about this. And this has been the biggest thing. People have told us that between 15 to 20% less time spent in meetings across their organization, millions of dollars saved in payroll for larger companies. So this stuff has been really, really impactful. So I want more and more people to be able to experience this stuff. And so the Fellow My Week view has a lot of this stuff also baked in, which I'm very excited about.
And if you're here watching this video and you're perhaps, like Aiden said, a CEO, an operations leader, or an executive who's interested in learning more about meeting guidelines for your company, we're going to post a link in the chat section so you can speak to one of our meeting experts about it.
Super powerful. Okay, so there's one more thing that we want to talk about before we jump into the Q&A. Excited to answer your questions. I see that there are a lot of questions. I'm very excited to do that. And the thing that I want to talk about is, one of the things that has been a problem, and it is an unintended problem that we created. And so this is the concept of the word stream. And so today what we're announcing is we are retiring the word stream from the Fellow lingo, from the Fellow dictionary. And it's a bittersweet moment, right? Because it's been something that has been part of Fellow for years now. But what we found was for newer users, and part of our goal is to make sure that Fellow is adopted and easily adopted everywhere. So where we don't need to invent new words to describe something, we think it's best not to do that. And so what we've done is something very, very basic. Where a stream comes in, so for those of you who are using streams but struggling to describe it, what a stream was for recurring meetings primarily, right? Or for recurring meetings, it's effectively a series of notes tied together. That's what it is. It's a series of notes tied together. So rather than inventing a word called stream, what we're going to do from now on is call it exactly what it is, which is a series of notes. In other words, it's a note series. So that's all we're going to call it. From now on, a stream is just going to be called a series. It's very descriptive. It says exactly what it is. It's also lingo used in the calendar world because you have meeting series, right? Something that people are familiar with. And where you see this is actually there isn't a lot of places that you actually see that word, but one of the common ones was in your home tab. There was an other section. You would see it there, but you can see that when I hover over, now that's called a new series, or when you press record for a particular series of notes, we're just going to say this is going to record the series. And so all this to say is it's not going to change a lot in terms of the actual user experience. We think it's going to make it a lot more simple. It's a lot more straightforward. But it is, again, a bittersweet moment, retiring a word that's been part of the Fellow lingo for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And
if you're a Fellow power user, make sure to tell your teammates, make sure to tell your friends, like, hey, guys, we're no longer using the word streams. And yeah, we're calling them series from now on. But Aiden, this has been such an amazing event. So many great updates. And I know people have questions for you. So are you ready to take those questions in the live Q&A?
Let's do it. Let's do the live Q&A.
Let's go to the live Q&A.